All right, welcome in another episode of Hockey Royalty Live, the official podcast of hockeyroyalty.com. Tonight is another episode in our crossover series. I got Mike from Ducks and Pucks joining us tonight to discuss our Freeway rivals down south. So get in the chat, like and subscribe. Let's go. That intro was brought to you by Ezera, their new single Blind Out Now. Mike, welcome to the pod, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm glad to be, part of the network and, doing different podcasts and being on here with you. Talk about our, SoCal rivalry with the Kings and the Ducks.
Yeah, Mike is also on THPN with us, just joined up. So hopefully we'll be doing some more crossovers in the future. How are you enjoying the Brotherhood so far?
It's been good, man. I did one other podcast last week in addition to my show. And like we talked about before, we've both been on kind of crazy schedules trying to do a whole bunch of shows after kind of being off for a little bit.
Yeah, hockey ramps up pretty quickly. You guys have a preseason game tonight. We just had one the other night. So things are getting cooking there, and we'll get into all that. It's nice to have a fun season. There's going to be a lot of parallels with the Ducks and Kings over the years, a lot of good rivalries. But you guys are into fresh coaching change, just like we are, a little bit 1 year removed. So how has that been? How was that last year with the new identity for the team? And then this year, obviously, you get the new jersey, second year with the new head coach. Kind of seems like a rebirth for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of crack up when I look at head coach Cronin for the Ducks. Kind of reminds me of Kurt Russell in the movie Miracle, right? He's just hard-nosed. Maybe the guy that will sit there and yell again and again and doing the drills over and over. So I think the first year last year was a bit of adjustment for the guys. For us, we had Dallas Eakins as a head coach for a couple of years, and a lot of players were familiar with him at the San Diego level, at AHL, and then carried over to the NHL. So bringing in Cronin was a bit of a change. I think there was a lot of adaptation last year and adjustments that had to be done for the team to kind of get used to the practice schedule and the team meetings and whatnot. And I think this year, in the second year, they'll be more on page with that. We added Fabry and Dumoulin in the offseason. We also got Cutter Gauthier, who's coming up, was just with the team real briefly at the end of the season last year. So those guys may need a little bit of adjustment. But I look forward to the second year with them kind of getting things going more, because they've already been under Cronin for a year. They understand where he's coming from and the systems he's trying to implement.
Did you think Dallas was a little bit too soft for a young team and they needed a little bit more structure? How do you feel like he does a better job with the talent that you guys have assembled?
Yeah, I feel like with Dallas Eakins, I think he did a great job developing players at the AHL level. But I do feel with Cronin in there is more structure, a little bit more pressure on the guys that's needed to perform. So I do feel like the transition to Cronin is the right time, the right place, and something that the guys needed, going into this last season and now this year.
Well, let's dive right into those young guys. I know that you had a big one in Leo Carlson, Owen Zellweger, and then Cutter are both looking like they're trying to take the next steps in their games. And shoved into the spotlight. Obviously, Leo was on a pitch count last year for people who didn't know, with the amount of games he was going to play. What do you, open forum for you, speak about these young players in general, and what do you think their actual opportunity will be this season?
I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of opportunity this year. As you mentioned, Carlson was on that pitch count last year. We used to talk about the Leo plan, right? And he ended up playing about 55 games. He also had injuries before the season and during the season. So, that's one thing I'm looking for this team to hopefully be more healthy this year. We had a lot of injuries last year. But I look at Carlson to take a big step. I thought he did well last year. I'm looking for him to play more games. We had some of the lines that were out there, going into the training camp. We don't know if they're the official lines, but he's supposed to be with Gauthier and Killorn. So I look at them to really put stuff together. A lot of people are big on Cutter Gauthier. They're thinking, hey, 30 goals this year. I don't think that. I think at least 20, and I would be happy. Could he get 30? Absolutely. Is he in the Calder race? I think he could be in there too. Of course, the season hasn't started yet, but I think there's a tremendous opportunity with those guys on that line. And then same thing when you have Trevor Zegras, McTavish, and Terry as well, that it looks like they may be on another line too. And that's what the Ducks need to do. They need to get these guys going and get some more consistent scoring, especially in the top 9. The Ducks had a rough time last year. They were 3rd worst in the league in scoring. We only had 203 goals, which was only better than San Jose and Chicago, which isn't saying much. So I'm really looking for these guys to get going, and a key for this team would be more balanced scoring in that top 9.
It's probably why you drafted 3rd, right? And chose Mr. Seneca.
Right.
Who was surprised that you guys even drafted him.
Right. I made a t-shirt about it.
So the interesting off-season storyline with Cutter kind of forced his way out of Philadelphia. You guys showed interest, brought him in here. How has the headlines been with him since he's been in camp? Has it been all positives? Has he, obviously he's saying the right things. I assume that he wants to be here and bring the Ducks back to, the promised land. But what has kind of been the vibe with him in camp?
Everybody loves Cutter. They had for us, the Ducks fans, they have an Orange Alliance, which is season ticket holders and whatnot. And they had an event where they showed off the new jerseys. I'm wearing the road one right now, the white one. But he was there, and he took like a flight like the night before, the morning of, to like get in there and be there. And he was really pumped up to be with the Ducks. Everything he said has been very positive. I got to talk to him a little bit after that event, briefly, and I think he's going to be great. He's got a little bit of swag to him, just like Zegras does too. Some people, it rubs them wrong. I like it. I like the swag. I think as long as they can back it up and perform on the ice, go for it. So it's been a very positive experience. People here like Cutter. They're big fans. He's a big fan of being here. And, it didn't work out in Philly. I know there's a lot of people that are upset in Philly about that, but I feel like it's a match made in heaven here in Anaheim.
Yeah, I think my favorite player or my favorite prospect is Brant Clark for the Kings. I'm conductor, Sultan of the Brant Clark fan club and Clark train, as we call it over here. And right. But he's got the swagger, he's got the cockiness, and I think it's similar to when Drew Doughty was younger. Right. Just displayed that huge confidence, and it's just about funneling it in the right direction. And I know Clark in an interview this year said, "Hey, my goal isn't just to make the roster. My goal is to be dominant in the NHL. I want to be a contributing factor for the Kings." And he just seems that he's focused his confidence in that way. It hasn't changed his game at all. And I think he has the utmost belief in himself. This seems more of a focused nature. And I wonder if that's kind of the way that Cutter views himself.
Yeah, I think so too. When he went into that national championship game, he felt like that. And he talked about the other team was going to be in tears. And then it kind of backfired on them because they ended up losing that game and it didn't work out. And Verbeek talked about it a little bit, and Verbeek's a little bit more old school. But I think, yes, I think that's how he feels. And I think there's a couple guys on the Ducks like that. Like I said, the Zegras too, sometimes a little bit polarizing with some people. But I think they come in there and they have that attitude. They have that confidence. And if Cronin and Verbeek can kind of reel it in, right, into not getting too arrogant, but more, just confident being in there, I think it can work out. I liked what I saw with Cutter. Granted, it was only one game last year against Vegas at the end. I watched some of the rookie showcase that, obviously the Kings hosted. Cutter had a couple great goals in there too. He looked phenomenal. I really expect big things from him. There's, like I said, other people are expecting even more out of him than I am. I think that he can get at least 20 goals and definitely be a top 9 or 6 contributor on this team. So I look forward to that. I do like that. I like that. Just like you said with Clark too. I think you guys have some guys on your team too. You mentioned Dowdy. Dowdy's always had that, and that's, whenever we play each other, I always get amped up with Dowdy because he's a fierce competitor. He plays the game hard. I mean, that's the way he is. And when we play each other, I don't want him to do well. But obviously, if he's a guy on my team, right, I would take Dowdy any day. I mean, that guy is a fierce guy, and that's what I like with this team with the Ducks. I feel like we try to get more of an identity like that. I felt like in the past, not necessarily a knock on Dallas Aikens, but I felt like we weren't as strong as far as our forecheck and getting in front of the net. Some of the things that worked for you guys, especially in the early 2010s, I mean, you can't deny it. You guys won a couple championships. You guys are great at that. And I think the Ducks are trying to get in a similar system of working the cycle, getting in the forecheck, getting in the goalie's face. And I think with this roster, we've got more guys on the team that can be like that. So I'm really curious to see how this season goes. I'm really curious to see the Freeway series and see the battles that we have with each other.
Well, there's going to be confidence aplenty, and how you can also get confidence is with our first sponsor here at THPN, BetterHelp. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. So if you were thinking about getting some therapy, or if you want to grow, or if you want to learn how to balance your life, BetterHelp can help you. Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because, hey, wonderment can come at any age, my man. I'm 37. I'm still trying to learn some things. Yeah. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, or even switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN. Well, people that can help these youngsters is the new captain. Also, obviously fearsome on the ice. But Gudas has been named the new captain of the Ducks here. Interesting story with, in his younger years, getting all those penalties and misconducts and kind of being known as a little bit of a ruffian, and now maturing in his old age, has become a leader in the presence in the locker room. Talk about him as the new captain. Why is he the right fit for Anaheim?
I think there's a couple of things. I think like we talked about, being more of a tougher team, more of an aggressive team. I think that he obviously brings that game, like you said, a little bit more maybe off the handle in the beginning of his career. The guy is super intense. I was very fortunate. I got to meet him twice in the last year, actually recently too, and talk to him. But he brings a lot of different elements. He's a family man. He brings that. He likes to mentor the younger players as well, which I think is huge, especially on the blue line. We've got a very, very young blue line that needs some direction and whatnot. And he's an intense competitor on the ice, and he's a very, very likable guy off the ice. Like I said, when I talk to him, he's very approachable. He's funny. He's just really into the game and being that leader. And I think that the goal is that he will be the captain for a few years, and then eventually we can transition to maybe one of the younger guys down the road. So I think his whole thing right now is bringing that element of being a hard worker, being a team player. And a big thing I think about his game is that he brings the other people around him up, right? And I think that that's a leadership quality that you look for in a captain. Obviously the captain's going to be the guy that wants to go out there and dominate and take care of business. But just like Getzlaf, he was one of the greatest captains that the Ducks had. He protected the other guys. He helped mentor the young guys. He took control of the locker room. And I think that's what Gudas has. He has that respect. And, he backs up everybody else, and he tries to make everybody else better on the team. And I think that's a huge quality that the Ducks need, especially right now.
Yeah, with all those young guys, sometimes you just have to teach kids how to be a pro and how the game is different. And 82 games is a lot. These kids, some of them in college only play 30, 35, and then, you're in the youths and you're playing maybe 60 games. 82 is a long schedule, and you're playing against the best every single night. I know that's a mental and taxing thing. So outside of BetterHelp, you need a good captain. You need a good captain to nurture those guys. And I think, Kings have been fortunate enough to go from Dustin Brown to Anze Kopitar. Yep. But the Kings after that, after Kopitar decides to hang him up, what does that look like? And I think, for, like you say, the transition captain, Gudas might be a good one for that franchise.
Yeah, that's what I look at. I mean, he's only got a couple more years left on his contract, so I'm really curious to see what happens if he gets an extension and then they keep him longer as a captain, or are they going to keep him for a couple years and then try to pass it off on someone like a McTavish, or a Terry, or even a Carlson who's coming up. So there's a lot of the younger guys that in 2 or 3 years they might be the next long-term captain. But I think for now, with Gudas in there, it's the right time, and I'm happy because we haven't had a captain for the last couple seasons. I know some people don't make a big deal about it; they don't think that it's an issue. We had 3 alternates for the longest time, and I'm not really a fan of that. I think you need to have someone that is the spokesperson for the team, that is the leader for the team, and it's going to set the tone for this team. And I think he fits the mold of Cronin and Verbeek. They want a team that is going to play other teams tough. And that's something that I feel that we really haven't had in the last couple seasons. I feel like we've had flashes of that here and there. And then we've had other games where, sad to say, we get blown out or we get behind by a lot, and then the game's over. So last season it wasn't a great season, but as Verbeek talks about and everyone knows, we had a lot of one-game losses. So I'm really curious this year if we can flip the script and have a lot of one-game wins. And I think that Gudas is a guy that can help mentor these younger guys and get them going, because you and I talked about before the show. I feel like the Ducks have been in the rebuild forever, and I feel like the Kings have gotten out of it much faster. And I think some of us have gotten frustrated with that. So I'm hoping that this year we can take a little bit more of a bigger jump and kind of get us to being more of a competitive team. Over the last couple of years, not going to lie, down the stretch, it was very frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, not winning, and I know the Kings decided to go with a different route by bringing in some veterans that were instant impact makers and kind of making the young kids earn their keep. Instead of being thrust into prominent roles wide array. And we'll talk about those young guys that have had flashes for you guys and then have kind of tailed off. Actually, just bring it right in right now. So you've had rebound. I call this question, we're rebounding to form. And I think you've had a couple of young guys who've had flashes like Zagreus, McTavish, and Terry, whether it's been a full good season or it's been flashes within a season, they haven't been able to put the consistent nature into their game for multiple seasons in a row and kind of really been known as a reliable force. And so, Zagreus had that good rookie season. We thought he's going to be, this prolific goal scorer. Obviously had the run with the NHL video game. McTavish showed right away that he was a big dominant power forward. Terry had the 30-goal season. So all these guys have room to return to form. Why do you think that's a possibility this season? And then will playing on a line together help all 3 of those guys that have the same goal?
Yeah, I think part of last year there was a few things that were problematic. Obviously, Zegras in the contract, that didn't work out in the beginning. He got a late start. That's never good, especially for younger players. You want to get on the ice and get going right away. So I think that hurt them. And then Zegras was hurt throughout the season. McTavish was for a little bit. And Zegras had a hard time. He only had 6 goals, but he only played in 31 games. So it was a little bit rough for him to get going. And I talk about this on my show too, is that consistency is key. And when you're juggling these lines throughout the whole season, it doesn't work. You look at Carlson too. Carlson was hurt in the preseason, hurt in the regular season. It doesn't work. But I think if you have a healthy Zegras with McTavish and Terry, that they can, if they are on the same line, assuming that, but if they're together, I think they can do some great things. McTavish has been working out like crazy. There's a lot of videos of him out there during the summer just busting his butt, working hard. Carlson's put on some muscle too as well. And I think those guys can get together. And I'm really curious. I want to see Zegras, McTavish, and Terry together. I think that they work well. And then you've got Cutter, Carlson, and probably Killorn together, which I think is another great match and to see. And I think the key with these guys is getting that balanced scoring. The Ducks didn't really have that last year. You had Vetrano with 37 goals, and then it just tapered off. You didn't have a lot. Yeah, you had Terry with 20, and then you had a couple guys with 19 and 18, and that was really it. And I think that was a big problem with the Ducks. Like I talked about earlier, they're third worst in scoring. We need to get that back up, and I think if we can get the top 9 going, it would be great. You've got Strome and Vetrano possibly on the second or third line, however it shakes out with Fabry coming in. Fabry's a guy that can get 20 goals. I think if these guys can all get the chemistry between the top 3 lines, the top 9, and generate 60 to 70 goals each line, which is very, very doable, that would get the Ducks back within that range. That'd be 180 to 210 goals, which still not great, but that would get them in that area. And then, of course, you've got the blue line and the fourth line that could come in there and work it out. But for this team, I think consistency is key. Avoiding injuries would be huge. We had a couple near scares, like Zegras took a puck in the face this last weekend at training camp. So did Pavel Regenda, but they're both okay. A couple minor injuries with Gaucher and Minty as well, but they're day-to-day, and they've been skating. Looks like they're going to be okay. And also Seneca, too. He had a walking boot a few weeks ago, but now he's back. So I think if we can set those top 9, get consistency, get that forecheck going, get in front of the net is how they're going to do it. And that's what I'm looking for. That's a huge thing for the Ducks, is trying to be consistent offensively in those top 9, forwards. Because like I said, it was really Vetrano leading the show. Then you had a couple guys right behind him, and that was really it.
It always helps getting offense from your blue line, and one of your mainstays on your team is Cam Fowler, who's been with the Ducks for quite a while. But trade talks heated up last year. Nothing was found, and there's been a lot of noise already so far this season, and without even a puck drop about possible trade candidates for him. I know we've had multiple players when we were rebuilding where the talks started pretty much instantly, and it was kind of a chatter throughout the fan base and perhaps the locker room. So Gudas might have his work cut out for him right away with limiting that in the locker room and allowing the young kids to play hockey. But what does Cam Fowler bring to the team? And do you, in fact, think he will be traded? Do you think they'll try to? Does he want to stay here for the rest of his career? Kind of what's your feeling on the whole situation?
Yeah, I mean, the Ducks have had some trade rumors, right, going around, just like you said. The Gibson and Zegras ones, it's just been like nonstop, whatever. But Elliot Freeman put out the stuff on Fowler, and it was pretty detailed. He talked about the team working with him, being in a positive environment, trying to figure out what's best for him and the team. Also, him with his no trade clause, trying to loosen that up a little bit because it's pretty restrictive as far as that he can make trades and whatnot. And it sounds like from what Elliot Freeman is that it's a real possibility. And I've talked to a couple other people around the organization, and they think it's a real possibility too. It almost sounds like it's more of a when is it going to happen, not if kind of a thing. There was another report that he wasn't going to show up to training camp, which we all kind of knew that was not legit because he has a contract. Usually in the NHL, if you have a contract, you show up to training camp. So that was a little bit far-fetched, but I do think he gets moved. I think that if it doesn't happen at the beginning of the season, maybe it happens before the trade deadline. I feel like the Ducks really leaned on him a lot last season. He was playing, I want to say, around 25 minutes a game and was getting taxed. And I think this season the Ducks need to get away from that. Whether he gets traded right away or later or however that works out, you've got guys like Minchikov and Zellweger up there. Like you said, you have Gudas as now being quote-unquote the senior guy and the captain on that blue line. I think we need to start transitioning to these other guys and working on them. I like Fowler. I mean, he's been a Duck since day one. I remember seeing him in the very beginning and seeing him grow and develop with his team. But it may be a situation where he gets moved in its time. But it is going to be difficult because the Ducks are barely above the cap floor. And Zegras' contract's in the $6 million range. So they're going to have to figure something out. They're either going to have to retain salary, take on a contract. It's not just going to be, oh, okay, we're just going to trade him and it's going to be an easy deal, in my opinion. I think the Ducks can do it and can move him. And there's plenty of room on our blue line for these younger guys to come up. But it's a very interesting situation because that really popped up and became a concrete thing recently. Where, like, we've heard the Gibson rumors. I joke, I make this on my show. I say, like, since 1985, we've heard that Gibson's going to be traded. And, it's been like 3-4 years now with him. And then obviously Zegras is always popular. I think people like clickbait, so they want to talk about, oh, Zegras is going to get traded. It's like, okay. But Fowler, I think it's a real possibility. I think the Ducks have plenty of depth on the blue line. I think that they can trade him and move along. But I think that they, don't need to lean on him so much this year, and they need to start working on the future with some of these other guys coming up.
So just for everybody listening, he has 2 more years left on his deal. The cap hit for each year is $6.5 million. So if the Ducks need to be on the cap floor, I mean, taking a lot of that contract back, it usually gives you more in return from the other team. They could also take a problem Mary contract back in the deal for extra picks or a high prospect. So lots of wiggle room for the Ducks when it comes to the situation. It seems like ultimately it'll be up to Fowler whether he believes that he wants to finish his career here or he wants to go chase a trophy elsewhere in the situation. And if a guy's played your entire career with your team, you owe it to him to let him do what he thinks is best for his family.
Yeah, and that's how I feel. I have the utmost respect for him. I've also been able to meet Cam Fowler a couple of times to talk to him. He's one of the nicest guys, most genuine people as well. And if he wants to go to another team and try to go, win a cup and be in another situation, because obviously the Ducks were not in that, realm right now. It's down the road a few years. I wish him nothing but the best. I think he's got to do, what he feels is best. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but the signs are pointing towards there's a good chance that he could be traded, in the near future.
Speaking of odds, our second fortune here, our sponsor is from DraftKings. Use code THPN there. So odds are forever in your favor. Whether you call it a TD, tutty, taking it to the house, whatever you call a touchdown, they matter more here at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. Ready to place your first NFL bet? Try betting on something as simple as like a player scoring the touchdown. Odds for Thursday night football couldn't be easier for you. If you think it's going to be a pass to CeeDee Lamb at plus 550, or if you think they're going to run it in with Ezekiel Elliott at plus 1,000, or maybe you think the Giants are going to be the first to score with Malik Neighbors plus 900. Odds are always changing, so get in there early and seeing which player will score that first touchdown of the NFL game. So ready to score a touchdown dance of your own? Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $250 in bonus bets when you just bet $5 and get a month of NFL Plus Premium. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for people gambling. Call 888-78-977-77 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill and Casino Resort in Kansas. 21 age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball. NFL Plus Premium offer only available for new and former NFL Plus subscribers. Additional NFL Plus Premium terms at nfl.com/terms. Well,
such a mouthful.
It flows right off the tongue.
Right.
So speaking of pipes and being traded with Gibson, now obviously a young guy coming in there, Dostal, is that how you pronounce his last name?
Yeah, you're right.
Dostal, yeah. Had a little bit of play last year. Not really what a lot of people were thinking was going to come from, his exceptional career in the AHL. But, the Anaheim wasn't really exactly a poster boy for defense last year. So he's hoping to get started. I know he's had some quotes about how he wants to up his game. Will Gibson return to all-star form? Is he going to be on the out the window? Where's your feeling about what's going on between the pipes for the Ducks?
Well, last season it was interesting. You had Gibson started 44 games, and you had Dostal started 38 games. So it was very, very close. Towards the end of the season and the final weeks, Dostal took over the net. Gibson seemed to kind of have a few maybe ailments going on, which almost every player has towards the end of the 82-game season. But I expect this to kind of be a 1A, 1B situation to start the season. I think that they're both going to play even amount of games. Kind of reminds me of the Anderson Gibson thing that we had a few years back. When the Hawks and the Kings and the Ducks were all in that mix back then. And I think that Dostal will take over at some point this season. I really do. Maybe not right away, but I think maybe in the middle of the season that he will become more of the number one goalie. That's just my feeling. I think that Gibson, it's the same thing. You know, Elliot Freeman also talked about Gibson when he reported on Fowler and said that he was in a similar situation, that the Ducks are working with him, trying to figure out something. But it's going to be tough too. Gibson has a similar contract with Fowler. Another $6 million plus contract, a couple more years to go as well. So I'm really curious to see how the Ducks figure all that out, because if they're going to move Fowler and Gibson, I mean, you're talking about $12 million plus in salary cap, and we're only a few million over. So there's something that they're going to have to figure out there. I think Fowler's probably more likely to go than Gibson, but if he doesn't and they're playing, I look for Dostal to take over the net at some point this season.
He said it wasn't a great year. What were you seeing from him inside the pipes? Is it just, getting used to the NHL? Is it just the team around him was, riddled with injury? What did you see from his game?
For Dostal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think for him, there is still some growing pains. Obviously, he was learning from Gibson as well and being mentored from him. So I think there's still some things to his game that he can work on a little bit, on some of his reactions and whatnot in the game. But one of the things that hurt the Ducks for both the goalies really last year was the penalty situation. The Ducks were averaging over 5 penalties a game. And you can't sustain that on any team. If you're assuming most of those penalties are 2-minute minors, right? Obviously, there's some 4 minutes in there, double minors, whatever. But if your team is killing off penalties more than 10 minutes in a game, you're talking about about a sixth of the game, 16-70% of the time. I don't care who you are. I mean, that's extremely difficult on goalies to try to kill these penalties all the time. Have your defense out there playing on the penalty kill for a majority, of a game, and that's just not going to work. So I think that was part of the issue with the team, is that the Ducks tried to lean super heavily on their goalies and the penalty kill, and it's a recipe for disaster. No team can do that. The Ducks had the most penalties last year in the NHL, and it was 440. It's just crazy, and you just can't keep playing that way. So to me, part of it is the Ducks have to play more discipline and not take these penalties. With Dostal, like I said, I think he's got a little bit better feel of the game. I think earlier in the season, it was tougher for him to get into a rhythm because Gibson was the one playing more of the games. And then towards the end, he kind of got in a little bit of a rhythm then. So that's what I'm looking for in the beginning of the season. I'm curious to see if head coach Cronin alternates both and splits time, or does he go with the hot hand? And I think that's something that all coaches debate with when they have two really good goalies. Speaking
of stopping penalties, is a way to diffuse that is scoring some more on the power plays. We talked about Cam Fowler and his long run as being one of the top defensemen for the Ducks. He's usually in charge of power play one, but you have two young defensemen, Mintyukov and Zellweger, looking to get some time on the power play this year. Obviously, it'll open up some spots if Cam gets traded, but with all of them vying for spots on the roster, how do you kind of see the power play shaking up?
Yeah, I'm curious to see which forwards they're going to use. Like we said, we've got Gauthier in the mix now. You've got Carlson, McTavish, Zegras, and Terry. So on that first line, I look at probably 4 of those 5 guys to be the forwards, and then you're going to have Zellweger or Mintyukov on the point. And they both have pretty decent slap shots from the blue line. So, and they're very good transitional game, two-way game, and getting back and whatnot. So I look for those guys to pick it up, and that's something that the Ducks have to work on too. The special teams for the Ducks started out decent last year, and then it fell off. They, ended up with like 15-something% efficiency on the power play. They were like in the mid-70s on the penalty kill, and that's another problem too. If you can't get your special teams going both ways, that's not going to work out as well. So I'm curious to see if they take Fowler and maybe if he's however long he's with the team, if they put him on the second power play unit, or if they alternate Mintyukov and Zellweger between the first and second power play units to get them going. Because those two guys are very, very mobile, good at puck retrieval, good at passing, have a good slap shot. And I think they can create some plays that can really help the Ducks on this power play because, after the first maybe 10, 20 games last year, the power play fell off and had some issues. And the Ducks need to cash in on that. They need to get bodies in front. And I think they've got some guys that can do that. Fabry can get in front too if they put him on there. I think Cutter Gauthier is another guy that can go to the net. And that's a big thing. Head coach Cronin talked about that just before the San Jose Sharks Ducks game that's going on right now in preseason about getting that net front presence, which, I mean, it's big on the power play and it's big on 5-on-5. So I look at that as something that the Ducks need to work on. Try to avoid all those perimeter shots, right? Unless you're getting those good screens in front, because we see it all the time. You're not going to just shoot from the blue line and have a long bomb shot and it's a clear path, and the goalie's not usually going to miss it unless something fluky happens. So that's something that they got to work on. It's getting traffic in front, ripping that puck from the blue line. And I think both those guys, I'm really excited to see what they can do this season, especially if they play, most of the season, which we anticipate.
Well, it seems like there's a lot of what ifs that go on to this season for you guys at the Ducks. What are the biggest concerns for you for your team this season?
Well, one is staying healthy. Like I said, we had a couple of injuries that came up early, but it looks like they're all minor, so that's good. Last year, we were just destroyed with injuries. Carlson was hurt in the preseason, then the regular season. Zegras was out a lot. He only played 31 games, which is not much at all. McTavish missed a little bit as well. So that's one part of it. And the other thing is, I think consistency in scoring goals. Like I talked about, if we have these lines and these guys can score, I think that's going to be a huge benefit. If you have a Terry, Zegras, and McTavish are all healthy playing on the same line, Terry can score 20. McTavish can score 20. Zegras can probably do that too or close to it. Look to seeing how they're doing. I'm really curious to see with Cutter. Like I said, a lot of people are big on him. You put him with Carlson. Carlson's no longer on a pitch count. Cutter is also not on a pitch count. That was brought up recently. That's not going to happen. So they're going to have, the reins off, and they're going to be able to do their thing. Killorn had a slow start last year because he was hurt, but then he chipped in with 18 goals. So I look at those guys to do their thing. You've got Stroma and Vetrano. Those guys work well together. I don't know that Vetrano gets 37 goals again. I think it was a little fluky last year, but I see him getting 20. You throw Fabry in there, and you get that top 9 with that consistent scoring. And then even on the fourth line, you look at Brett Leeson. He was a little bit of a surprise. He had 11 goals last year. So if you can get the fourth line chipping in, maybe 30, 40 goals, maybe I'm a little bit, high on that. Maybe that's a little bit too much. But, I mean, if you can get those guys that are rotating in there added in, and then that can help. So that's another thing. It's getting the bounce scoring, getting the special teams going, and trying to stay out of the box. I feel like for the Ducks, being disciplined is something that's been difficult for them. As they get in the box, they get out of a rhythm. They don't get in their 5-on-5 mode. And, you can't kill penalties all game long. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you have the best defenseman in the league and you have whatever goalie in there. After a while, the guys get tired. You're sitting there in either a box or diamond formation trying to kill off these penalties all the time. Eventually, other teams are going to get through and score, and that's what happens. So those are kind of the keys that I look for. Is balanced scoring, playing disciplined hockey, staying out of the box. And I think those things can help this team do better this year. I mean, I hope we can only go up because, last year was another rough year.
Well, if all those things happen, so you get some more scoring, the youth progresses, you're staying out of the box a little bit more, you're getting some quality saves from Dostal. Are you guys nipping at the heels for the wild card, or you think you're still a year or two away?
I think if everything goes right, I think we'll be there. I think we can. I think that we can be kind of in that 4th or 5th spot in the division if we can stay healthy, be consistent, get the power play and penalty kill online, have these other guys come in, and of course Dostal and Gibson got to play out of their minds. I think that we can. Are we a contending team? No, I think at the top you're still going to have Edmonton in our division. Vancouver was up there last year. You got Vegas, that's always in the mix. You guys have been in the mix as well. So I look at us being kind of in there. Calgary, San Jose, who knows? But I think that they can get more competitive, win more games. Like I said, we lost so many games by 1 goal last year. So I think with the addition of Fabry, Dumoulin, you have some of these younger guys coming up and playing, and I want to see how Cutter's going to do as well. I think that we can compete for that. It's going to be tough, though, because, you get in a wild card situation and say we play Edmonton, Vancouver, Vegas, or whatever, and get bounced out right away. It's kind of tough, but I am excited for the season. I think that we will make some strides this year. It's just a question of how far we will improve, but I think we will improve this year.
The youth movement is alive in Southern California for both teams. It'll be interesting to see how well they go this season. I know when we were trying to make that rebuild, it was just nice to see some of the young stars play well. So hopefully there's some quality hockey being played instead of it just being a dumpster fire. That's always the worst when nothing's going right for your team. So hopefully you guys can see some progressions and we get that rivalry back cooking down in Southern California. Well, Mike, appreciate you coming on. Why don't you plug where everybody can find you at on Twitter and on for your podcast?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. Again, happy to be part of the Hockey Podcast Network. To find our stuff, it's just Ducks and Pucks. It's Ducks, the letter N, and then Pucks. On everything, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, we're on all those. And the main website is ducksandpucks.com. You can go on there and follow us and whatnot. We have a Patreon too, and try to pump stuff up as well. And, see you guys at the games. And I'm excited. We got new uniforms. You guys got new uniforms, both retro. I like both. And, some of the people joke about for us, they're like, hey, if we lose, we're going to at least look good in these new uniforms. So, that's one thing I look at. I'm excited. I was able to pick up my couple uniforms, and I love them. I know some people think it's too much orange, but I love it. I think it's great. I like your guys' uniforms too. It takes me back to the 80s and 90s when I grew up. So I'm really excited to see how the season goes, and I think the Ducks and Kings are going to have some more competitive games. I feel like the last couple seasons might not have been as intense, so I'm looking to see if it gets a little bit more intense this season.
Nothing wrong with some good hockey down in Southern California. Well, thanks again for coming on, Mike. As always, you can find our stuff here at hockeyroyalty.com. All of our socials are down there scrolling across the bottom. So give us a like on the way out and hit that subscribe button for all the rest of the crossovers and hockey royalty news. Thanks, Mike, and you have a good rest of your night, my man.
You too. Thank you.
And as always on this podcast, go Kings, go.